Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, Optimizing Slotting Strategies, How to Balance Mastery, Slotting, and Daily Optimization for Operational Excellence. Thank you for making the time out of your day to join us today. The fact that we had so many registrants for this event today speaks to how important having an effective strategy is to the efficiency and profitability of the average distribution operation. As we do with all of our content, whether it's here on YouTube or over on LinkedIn, we try to make it as actionable and less theoretical as possible. So whether you're a seasoned supply chain executive or an ambitious analyst or slotting expert, we want you to leave here not just with some tips and tricks to help improve or overhaul your existing process. We also want to reframe how you approach fulfillment optimization as a whole. And with that, let's begin. First, my name is Robbie Cluett, VP of Business Development and Customer Success with SynContext, and I'm joined here today by Hector Orozco, President and CEO of SynContext. A little bit about SynContext for those who are not aware of us. We're experts in supply chain design and end-to-end fulfillment optimization, which includes facility and layout design, slotting optimization, requirement planning, and among other things. Our primary specialization is in cloud-based enterprise applications and advanced analytics, and that includes our fulfillment optimization system, SKUstream. We won't go into too much detail about SKUstream here today, but if you like what you hear in this webinar and it sort of resonates with you, please do reach out to us and we'll be happy to provide you with more information about it. So there are four primary learning objectives today we want to make sure we cover. The first is to illustrate the impact of an effective daily and data-driven slotting optimization strategy. Show how to balance mastery, slotting, and daily optimization for maximum efficiency. Thirdly, we want to show the importance of intentional leadership and the advantages of leveraging technology. And last but not least, we want to explain how to implement a winning strategy step by step. And we'll do that through a couple of case studies that we have at the very end of this webinar that you'll want to stick around for. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hector.
Thank you, Robbie. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here with you. Today, we're going to be talking about a technique, an optimization technique, which is slotting. And we're going to talk about how it gets applied in two different strategies, whether it is through a mass reset of an operation or a daily optimization of this operation. But before getting into the details of the technique, I'd like to spend some time on the principles behind it. And for that, I'd like to begin with optimization itself. So optimization, simply put, means changing variables to achieve an objective given a set of constraints. So that's the simplest way that you can see optimization. And when we are talking about distribution operations, this objective, which is the overarching goal, could be to either maximize something or minimize something. It could be maximizing direct labor productivity, minimizing cost, maximizing capacity utilization, minimizing footprint required, and so on. So we have this goal that we need to pursue, and it's important to have that clear in our optimization exercise. But we also have the constraints that we talked about, and these can be in the form of limitations that we'll encounter when we try to optimize, such as if we're optimizing a distribution center operation, whether or not we're limited to what we can do to the racking. Can we change it? Can we reprofile? Or is that a constraint? Should it stay the same? Also, should we stay within the existing footprint, or can we expand? Or even if we're considering any conventional versus automated alternatives. So those are the constraints. And we can get into details of ergonomics, of the golden zone when we're talking about slotting, or even if we want to keep certain product out of certain areas. So those are the two main things of optimization. Now, these constraints can also be secondary objectives, right? So if our main objective is to minimize cost, or maximize direct labor productivity. A secondary objective would be we also want to either not increase replenishments, or we want to also reduce replenishments. And what we do, the way that we define these objectives and constraints, that's what's going to, the action that we take is going to depend on how we define these objectives and constraints. So if we look at an example of optimization, it could be we want to maximize direct labor productivity, overall direct labor productivity, while staying within our existing footprint, not touching our racking, and maintaining ergonomic constraints, not heavy items in upper levels and so on. So that would be an example of how we would define this optimization scenario, an example of it. Now let's talk about the principles behind fulfillment optimization, which apply to slotting optimization. So if you want to truly optimize your operation, you need to have these 5 principles to carry it out successfully. The first one, and this is regardless of whether you're trying to optimize an e-commerce, direct-to-consumer, micro-fulfillment operation, an operation where you're shipping larger orders to retail stores, or whether you're doing some macro fulfillment of larger orders going to distribution centers, whether your own or your clients. So the principles are, number 1 is you need to use the right data that encompasses all the functions in your operation, right? So that means everything that's relevant to this optimization you want to do, it needs to be captured. You need to have the right operational data. That could mean from purchase orders, inventory on hand, outbound orders. It can extend to a forecast or even growth projections. So any relevant operation in your distribution center needs to be captured. The second principle is once you have all the functions captured with your operational data, you need to express each of the functions in what we call activity drivers, which what we mean by that is the unit of work that drives activity in each of the functions. So for example, if we're talking about receiving, we can look at it from trucks received. If we're talking about unloading, we can talk about pallets unloaded. If we have labor on the dock reconfiguring and downstacking pallets, we can talk about cases fingerprinted, and so on, downstream, up to the point where we're talking about cases picked, selection, miles traveled, orders combined, and so on. So that's the second principle, expressing each function in its corresponding activity driver. The third principle is to convert those activity drivers into resources. What I mean by that is if I know how many pallets I need to put away, using my labor standard data or a reasonable expectation of productivity rates, I can convert that into how many hours do I require to handle those volumes, right? And another way to see resources could be man hours, but also translate that into dollars depending on how much does it cost each step of the process in terms of labor. So principle number 3, converting activity drivers into hours and dollars, otherwise called resources. So let's go now to principle 4. And that is, this is where optimization comes in. So apply an optimization function to achieve that objective that you define and that considers the constraints that are relevant to your operation. This is very important because you need to make sure that not only do you capture all your functions Do you understand the resources needed to handle it? But now you need a function that is going to help you, that is going to recommend something potentially different from what you're doing today, and that is going to achieve that objective. And more importantly, that is going to consider the constraints. That is going to be realistic, that is going to be something that you can apply to your operation. So now let's talk about the last principle. That's principle number 5, which is once you get those recommendations from your optimization function, now recalculate steps 2 and 3, which is recalculate your activity drivers by function and convert that to resources, that is hours and dollars, but based on the recommendations. When you do that, you can have a basis of comparison between the current state and the future state. Not only that, with these principles, you can first determine exactly what is it that you need to change in those variables. What changes are you going to do to your operation to optimize it? Number 2, you'll know exactly how much you can expect in benefits, whether it's saved hours, increased productivity, saved dollars. You can also understand the trade-offs between the functions. Often in the warehouse, you will have competing priorities. If you reduce travel, you may increase replenishments, and you need to understand the trade-offs in the different functions. And finally, you'll know exactly what to do to change. You'll be able to execute it. Now, why are these principles important? Well, first of all, regardless of whether you're embarking on the optimization by yourself, whether you're working with consultants, or whether you're looking for a technology solution, these principles apply to all of them, right? So this will help you have that roadmap of steps that need to be followed in your optimization project. And for example, if the data that you're using does not capture all the relevant functions, you may have blind spots where you may not know if you end up increasing or having an adverse effect that you're not aware of. If the optimization function is not flexible enough, yet have enough horsepower to handle the data that you're processing, it may turn into a black box that might be difficult to trust and get buy-in from everybody, all the stakeholders. And more importantly, it may not take you where you need to go or consider the right constraints for your operation. If, for example, that activity drivers are not calculated by function, how would you really know what exactly you can expect from the changes? Are you cutting replenishments? Are you cutting selection travel? Are you cutting cases fingerprinted? And ultimately, what's the net effect, the overall improvement once all the trade-offs are considered? So as I mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on slotting optimization, which is a fulfillment optimization technique. But there are other fulfillment optimization techniques that we won't be covering, which include distribution-centered design, whether you're planning a greenfield facility, whether you're planning expansions, whether you're planning a reset of a facility. That's another technique, another fulfillment optimization technique that follows the same principles, but it's applied to a more strategic level of planning. Another technique that we won't be covering today relates to layout optimization. So within the four walls of your operation, you may be looking at what's the best layout that I need. Should I evaluate product flow? Should I consider automation in certain areas of my operation? This happens at a more tactical level, and again, it follows the same principles, but it's a different technique. And finally, slotting optimization, which is what we're going to cover today. If you're interested in any of those techniques that I just mentioned that we won't be covering, make sure that you follow us on LinkedIn. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or check out our blog at synccontext.com. We post a lot of information and content related to these topics and guides. And so we'll have more information on those topics. Or if you had any specific questions, whether it's about the methodologies or technology and solutions for fulfillment optimization, feel free to give us a call, reach out to me or Robbie or anybody from our team. So having said that and getting the principles out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to Robbie and we can take a deeper dive now into slotting optimization and balancing the two strategies, whether to do a mass reslot or whether to do daily optimization, pros and cons. And so now let's go to Robbie.
Thanks, Hector. So what is slotting optimization? Well, we define it as the process of strategically organizing and allocating products within a warehouse facility to maximize operational efficiency. It involves determining the most suitable locations for each item based on various factors such as product attributes, order frequency, storage requirements, and picking patterns. In terms of increasing operational efficiency and reducing labor costs, an effective slotting optimization strategy is absolutely key, but there are many other benefits. It helps to minimize picking errors, it enhances productivity, increases capacity utilization, increases the safety of both product and people. Ultimately, it streamlines the overall fulfillment process, giving you an increased throughput capability, allowing you to deliver better customer service. The impacts are truly widespread through your people, your balance sheet, and your customers. Now, we know why it's important, but how do you know if your slotting is suboptimal? There are some visual cues like poor capacity utilization and increase in product damage, but there are also some not so visual symptoms that may go unnoticed through the day-to-day or attributed to something else altogether. With that, I'm talking about longer order turnaround times, increase in overtime, excessive pallet moves and replenishments. Everything you see on the screen here can be attributed to suboptimal slotting. As you can see, suboptimal slotting is something that is felt throughout nearly every function of the average distribution operation, though some may resonate more than others. Now, let's get into the balance between daily slotting optimization and mass reslotting. In our experience, prior to data-driven daily slotting optimization being the norm for many best-in-class distributors like it is today, mass slotting was leveraged as a way to sort of reset the operation once the challenges really started to add up. There wasn't really much of a balance there. The absence of an effective daily strategy really created the need for reactive mass reslots, and that's only for those who have the time, resources, and money to do it and do it correctly. So before we explore the balance between the two, let's review the benefits and drawbacks of each approach. Starting with mass slotting optimization. So the first one is you typically get the benefits immediately as soon as the reslot's finished. There is a potential for larger savings as well, especially the fewer constraints and the more changes you're willing to make. And the third one is that there are many benefits also when it comes to the ergonomics and product protection. So this is similar to the benefits of optimizing slotting in general. This is sort of part of any strategy, but with mass slotting, you can usually have more of an immediate impact on sequencing and really step back and evaluate zoning, create new rules, and potentially rethink where items are along the pick path. This is a perfect time to sort of add new rules as well when it comes to product weights and how to manage certain sort of hard to pick or heavier products, which does create a more ergonomic situation for your order selectors. So moving on to the downsides. Now, of course, there's drawbacks. Mass reslots are time-consuming, complex, and costly, as we mentioned. Usually, third parties are leveraged to handle these projects, and even then, it's still very resource-intensive. The implementation of mass reslotting can also disrupt ongoing operations. So in addition to it being complex and time-consuming, you're also typically having to do this in an operation that's already operational or already shipping orders every day, usually 5 to 6 days a week, maybe 7. And that can affect productivity. It can also be disruptive to your current labor that's on the floor there as well. So it doesn't come without any disruption. That's one of the main drawbacks of something like a mass reslot. And thirdly, the risk of the full strategy not being executed. Now, this is a drawback, but it's also more of an operational thing that goes on. So if you go through, say, something that's very complex, time-consuming, costly, disruptive, what happens if that timeline gets extended, right? There's corners that are sometimes cut. There's decisions that are made halfway through or at the very end to sort of not cut corners, but is there a way that we could finish this off because it's taking way too long? So there's that risk that you're not going to get what you expect because of those factors, and that is a real risk that we've seen multiple times. So let's go to the advantages of daily slotting optimization. So what are they? So daily optimization can be initiated without delay, offering prompt benefits. Low implementation costs. So it's compared to mass reslotting, daily optimization's implementation cost is relatively low with a system, like SKU-Stream, for example, that can be implemented without disruption, without delay, and with a cost that's relatively inexpensive as compared to many of the projects that are going on to sort of mass reslot the building, change around the layouts, especially when it's more reactive. And thirdly, there's no disruption to the operation, which is a big one. As I mentioned before, the disruption to the operation, at least in my experience, is one of the larger considerations that you don't really know what you're getting into until you start to carry out the moves and the project takes a bit longer than it's meant to be. And then there's some conflicting goals that usually pop up between executive teams and operational teams. And when it comes to daily optimization, there's no disruption, right? It's a system that gets implemented, and a process more than the system. It's a process that gets implemented that really touches on a few key personnel. It's not a full strategy that touches on everybody that's in the building. It's a few people that are turning the strategy around, and that makes it less disruptive, far less disruptive than a mass reslot. Which would ensure a consistent workflow and ensure less complexity when you're dealing with an operational DC. So, but there are also some downsides as well. It's not without its drawbacks, just like mass reslotting. The first one would be, instead of the benefits being immediate, like a mass reslot, usually when you're finished with a mass reslot, the next day you're accruing those benefits. With daily optimization, you're accruing benefits right away, but they are a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. A little bit less significant, and they do accumulate over time. So it really requires that consistency, which can be a drawback, but it's something that is that you would expect by not bringing something that's disruptive into the operation. Your benefits are going to accrue more over time than you would get them over at the very beginning. Consistency is required. So I just mentioned consistency. It's something that if you commit to daily slotting optimization, if you aren't consistent with it, if you aren't, just like it says daily, if you aren't doing it daily, then you're not going to get the benefits that you really want out of it. So from a reporting standpoint, from a usage standpoint, if you're using a tool, it has to be something that you commit to on a daily basis for new items and to reevaluate or to evaluate in the first place some reslot candidates. So consistency is required to achieve those benefits. And thirdly, there's a potential complexity. It's not something that comes without complexity at all. It's a lot less than mass reslotting, but there are some areas that do need work, right? The users need to learn a new process. The users need to rely less on their experience, gut feeling, and more on the data. It doesn't, especially if you're not. If your strong suit is not computers, or your strong suit isn't working with computers and programs, there is some learning involved. It's not without its complexity, especially without the right tools. If you don't have the right tools to utilize going through something like this, it's doing it right. It is very difficult without the right tools, and it can be very complex with multiple screens, multiple data points. So there are some drawbacks on that too, but that can be overcome usually with the right tool. So let's not forget that slotting is a daily activity for all distribution operations. It's not something that you're just adding in. If you're implementing a new strategy, it's not something that you're going to start to do. It's something you're doing already. The question really becomes: are you optimizing the process for maximum results or not? Is it a value-driven process, or is it something that the users are just trying to get done so they can move on to other responsibilities? That's really the only question that we're talking about here. It's something that happens every day, but are you taking most of it or not? Are you utilizing this operation or this process to give you benefits downstream, or is it something that you're just looking to get out of the way so you can move on, like I said, to other responsibilities? So when it comes to daily slotting, there are some common challenges faced by operators that make slotting optimization so important. These challenges are too critical to the efficiency of the operation to just be left to experience and rudimentary processes. Beginning with limited space availability. So this is a very common problem. The less space you have, the less optimization opportunity that's typically available. And if we know anything about industrial real estate these days, it's not overly abundant, depending on, of course, where you're situated. But in most hubs, it's very difficult to define space at a reasonable price these days, and a lot of operations have to sort of continue to make the best of what they have, and that means that a lot of operators are encountering this or will encounter this eventually. So that is a very common problem that's faced. We'll address it in the next slide or two, but in this case, a more tactical layout initiative might be needed. If you are encountering some constraints there, a more tactical initiative might be needed to free up space to optimize before you can really implement something that's on a daily side of things. Or if the operation is at the end of its design year, you may have to consider expanding or opening a new DC or large operation that better fits existing requirements. So those are the caveats on that first challenge. Dynamic inventory changes, so the second one down. This could be anything from fluctuating buying habits, SKU proliferation, changes in company strategies. So all of these pose, without the right slotting strategy, all of these things pose challenges to the operators. And it's the reason why, if you're doing slotting every day, the reason why you need to maximize those benefits is because all of these things are happening that the users are having to deal with manually or hopefully dealing with in some way, but in some cases it's just not being dealt with, right? The dynamic inventory changes are not being taken into account when items are being slotted, and that's causing more problems downstream. But that is a big one. The next one's seasonal demand fluctuations, sometimes on a weekly basis, depending on how seasonal your operation is. I know grocery is very much like this. It's very hard to keep up with manually without the right data. So if you don't know how the product is changing, what the difference is between the inbound volumes and the outbound volumes, and cost of inventory and the cost of reconfiguring pallets and things like that. There's just so many variables that you have to take into account that are very difficult without the right tools. The data is there. The data is there. It might not be readily available, but without the right tools to decipher the data and to kind of give you those actionable recommendations, it is very difficult to take into account the seasonal demand fluctuations, especially if they're on a weekly basis. Balancing conflicting objectives. So without the right data and tools, you may not be able to see the trade-offs, like I said before, between inbound, outbound, the different tasks that are on the floor. There's trade-offs to every slotting move, right? There's trade-offs to larger slots, smaller slots, how you configure your pallet when it comes in, how much you're keeping in the pick slot versus reserve. There's so many trade-offs that get missed. So there's a lot of challenges associated with conflicting objectives, and what metric are you looking to achieve? Are you looking to minimize replenishments? Are you looking to minimize pick path? And there really needs to be alignment on what objective you're looking to achieve, and once there's an alignment on it, then how are you looking at it in terms of your process? How are you trying to minimize that? Are you actually minimizing that? Are you doing the right moves to live up to your goal, or is your goal disconnected from what your actual process is? And lastly, different product dimensions and packaging types. So this is an important one. There are products that have specific requirements. So even if you're looking at open top produce and grocery, you're looking at hazardous materials, you're looking at very heavy objects, you're looking at items that have very interesting dimensions. There's a lot of challenges with carrying. They're not just square boxes all the time. So if you're dealing with products that have a bit more of a bit more specific requirements in terms of their slotting, it is very difficult to keep up with that. And when it gets to the hazardous materials, when it gets to food safety compliance, when it gets to real important considerations, then it becomes more of um, a key item when planning out a process, is to make sure that you're ensuring your specific requirements are met, and then after that, it's about productivity. Now, as important as daily optimization is to operational efficiency, there is a question that there is a place for periodic mass reslot initiatives. Now, by mass reslot, I don't mean a full layout transformation. I'm talking about ensuring your sequencing, pick paths, and equipment remain suitable to your operational needs as time progresses. It doesn't always take a huge project, and it does take questioning why you're operating the way you're operating, and some tweaks here and there that go beyond just reslotting. There are some instances where rack changes are needed. A lot of operations do like to upgrade technology, upgrade equipment. So it doesn't have to be a full layout transformation. It could be a few tweaks here and there that could fall into this category. And just like the principle behind daily optimization, the value of small marginal gains done throughout the year, like I said, small tweaks will lessen the need for a larger, more reactive transformation. Now, when it comes to some mass reslot initiatives, in the absence of the right tools, there are many reasons why these projects are not only done when absolutely needed, but a lot of these projects do end up not being carried through fully or failing altogether. So the first one will be similar to daily slotting. Even with mass reslotting, there are always space constraints that need to be taken into account. Secondly, these initiatives are also quite expensive. We talked about that as a drawback as you progress through a project, but even to get started in the first place, it's something that just doesn't even cross the boardroom table because of how expensive they're known to be. Usually budgets need to be planned far in advance, especially if new equipment or automation is being brought in. Mass reslots are also tough to execute without the right resources, and I'm mostly referring to tools and personnel. Often companies decide to bring in third parties to consultants, for example, to assist in the analysis and support the implementation, but as I'll discuss in a second, that's only 2/3 of the equation usually. Mass reslots take time, obviously, and time means disruption to a site that's in full operation. And you should not start something if you don't think you'll have the time to finish it or have the bandwidth to carry it out. If it does go over the initial timeline, usually mass reslots are built around a holistic strategy. If the strategy is not carried out fully, the ROI is usually eroded quite significantly and fairly quickly, depending on how dynamic your operation is. Lastly, and probably the most important, is lack of solid maintenance strategy or daily optimization. So if you've ever been through a mass reslot and looked through expected ROI numbers, you'll realize that they're usually annualized. If you get through the reslot in a few weeks, for example, and you don't have a plan how to maintain that strategy, whatever the strategy might be, for the other 48 to 49 weeks, your ROI is going to be unrecognizable because you haven't really fixed the underlying cause. And if your operation doesn't have the ability to do that, to execute the strategy without having the mass reslot, you're going to have the exact same problem afterwards. So that is an extremely important aspect of it that should not be ignored. A mass reslot does not overcome the need to have a daily strategy, and oftentimes the daily strategy does not overcome the need to have a mass reslot once in a while. It may push it off. It may make give you the ability to stay optimized throughout the year, but one does not negate the other. So in the pursuit of driving operational excellence and creating profitable growth, the decision between mass reslotting and daily optimization isn't a binary choice. It's really not a matter of one or the other, but how you fold both into your existing overall strategy to create short-term gains as well as long-term sustainability. So let's talk about some critical factors that must be in place in order to achieve true slotting optimization. So we're just going to focus on daily optimization right now. As we talked about, it really starts with these four. If you are questioning your own strategy, I would suggest starting with these first. There are other factors that you'll discover, but these are really the set the foundation. In addition to the 5 principles that we discussed at the beginning, these really do set the foundation of whether or not you can achieve true slotting optimization. In the absence of one or two, it will become very difficult for you to manage it or even execute it in the first place. So these are your non-negotiables. Starting with operational data, extremely important. Everything is leveraged by data. That's our philosophy, is to minimize assumptions, minimize guesswork as much as possible. Obviously, leverage your team and their experience, but when it comes down to making those decisions, and really trying to get the most out of your process, you really do need to leverage data. The second one is consistency, and this is not just in terms of getting the daily data that we talked about before, but it's also making sure that you utilize it daily. So it's not enough to just have the data available daily. You really have to make it a part of your daily process, both in terms of how you slot new items, but also how you evaluate opportunities. So that's very important, and consistency is absolutely necessary to really achieve that true slotting optimization. Proper tools, obviously, we're advocates of having proper tools with our product being SKU-stream. So we can't stress that enough. Obviously, it's very important to have that foundation of those 5 principles that we talked about. And once you have an understanding of those 5 principles and you agree that those are the principles you're going to be after, then it becomes very necessary to make sure that your tool enables you to adhere to those, enables you to take full advantage of those. So that's really where the proper tool comes into play, is what tool that's out there is going to help me to achieve slotting optimization with the 5 principles in mind. And also be able to leverage data and have a tool that's able to be used consistently and provides that feedback as well. So there's a lot of ways to evaluate a tool to ensure that it actually fits not just your optimization strategy, but your operation in general. Leadership is the fourth one. That's very important. Obviously, it has to be something that's taken seriously within the organization. There's a lot of dollars on the table, as we'll discuss in a few minutes with our case studies. There's a lot of dollars on the table to be had with a proper slotting optimization strategy, and the right amount of leadership and the right amount of direction needs to be in place in order for that to be fully achieved. To get into a bit more detail on the right tools, not to take too much time with it, but the first would be to utilize the right operational data. So again, we have to make sure when you're implementing the right tool that you can actually use the right data. Really has to be as line item as you possibly can, as granular as you possibly can to really get those details that you need. It must be used daily. It must not add complexity. Ideally, you're going to have to have the correct training and the correct support, but ideally the right tool is not going to add frustration. It's not going to add any complexity to your existing process. It has to be as easy as possible for those who are using it to gain that habit to really enjoy using it. Right? It's not just about getting something that's easy. It's about something that's you can tell that when you're using something that it's actually creating value. But it's also not adding any complexity to your existing process. It must be flexible. That's a very big thing, especially if you have a unique operation or you're shipping unique products. You need to have a tool that enables you to roll out your own strategy. Utilize the system to do what you want, as opposed to having to do what the system's telling you. The next one would be provide end-to-end optimization. So we talked about the difference between daily slotting and mass slotting. The right tool, in our opinion anyways, has to really give you both sides. It really has to show you the requirements, really has to show you on the concept side of things, really has to match that up with what you're doing today, rather than just telling you, okay, this is your day-to-day responsibility, this is your daily recommendations. But the right tool really needs to have that 5-year plan in mind, or that 10-year plan in mind on how you change year over year. So it really has to give you the full picture on not just daily optimization, but in terms of allowing you to carry out that strategy for a mass reslot initiative, and things like that. So it really has to be that holistic viewpoint that you're able to get from your tool. And on that note, providing feedback. So if the users know what kind of value they're adding to the operation, if the leadership is seeing what kind of value your system is adding to the operation, then it's more justified as being folded into an existing operation, even if it takes a bit more time to do it. If the right value is there, then it's always going to be used. And so it's very important for the system to sort of give you that feedback on how it's being used and what value it's driving to the bottom line and to the safety of your products and people. In terms of leadership, the process must be a priority. Like I said before, it really does need to be a priority, just like anything else. Proper alignment is needed from the top down. If you don't have alignment on the strategy, you're going to have conflicting goals, and you're going to have people that are confused as to how to use it, when to use it, why to use it. So alignment is absolutely critical from the top down. Performance metrics must be established as well. So, what do you want to achieve from this? The system, usually, at least with SKUstream, it can be set up in multiple ways to achieve multiple strategies that are uncovered during, say, an assessment, for example, of where the opportunity is. So it's important to understand, okay, what value are you trying to get out of this? What are you trying to solve? It has to be just more than, hey, we're trying to increase efficiency across the board. Well, what do you mean by that? What are the real challenges you're trying to achieve? And metrics need to be set up to kind of ensure that those goals can be hit. A feedback loop at all levels is critical. We talked about the importance of alignment. You can only have alignment when you have feedback, when you know sort of how the system is working, what kind of value, like I said, is it driving to the users, to the executive team, to the operation as a whole, and the company. That really needs to be as transparent as possible in order for leadership to really jump on board and really prioritize this. And again, consistency. So as a leader, ensuring that this is something that the team is using consistently. And if it's not, that's when alignment is necessary. Is get on the phone. Why wasn't this used today? Very simple stuff, but if it doesn't happen, then the strategy can sort of fall apart very quickly. Now let's review some case studies before we wrap it up today. We don't have a lot of time to dive too deeply into these. These are from relatively recent projects, but if you'd like to learn more about what was done specifically, or how the problems were uncovered in the first place, how the solution was designed, implemented, things like that, feel free to head back to our LinkedIn page and the event page if you were invited, or if you followed us. We usually invite all of our followers to these events. So if you were a part of that initial event, head back there, leave a comment, or always feel free to contact us directly. So we're starting with the importance of daily data-driven slotting optimization. So both of our case studies are actually from grocery distributors, but like I said, we just use a couple of our more recent examples. Both would be relevant over numerous industries. If you do want a similar case study to your industry, like I said, just reach out and either through the event page or directly, and we can try to find something that's more applicable to your challenges, your industry. So this is a client that was a leading full-line grocery wholesaler, very competent team, larger operations with a mix of automation and conventional, as we usually see. Their priority was pretty simple: optimize current state of each site within the network without any disruption. Now that's a big ask, but that was a priority that says, hey, we want to implement true slotting optimization. We have a system right now that we know that works, but we want to go even deeper than that. And ideally, we can't disrupt any of the operations, and that was very important. So those are the constraints that we were working with, and that was the priority on the customer side. Like I said, they did have a very in-depth process in place already, but they recognized where it fell short, and they realized they needed to start leveraging the right tools before they could reach the levels of efficiency and cost savings that they were really after. The solution that was designed for them was called Proactive Inbound Base Slotting Optimization, or PIBO for short. It involved implementing our fulfillment optimization system, SKUstream, over their existing operations. We didn't change anything. I believe we rezoned some of their buildings because that was a perfect time to do it. But aside from that, the system was just implemented over the existing operation. And what it was doing is it was ensuring that all new incoming items, or all new items in general, whether it was new to the building or not, were slotted with reduction of inbound pallets in mind. And that was the main metric. And we go back to the importance of establishing a metric. In their case, it was to minimize inbound pallets putaways and increase forklift productivity. They knew that if they didn't redesign their layouts, there wouldn't be much savings on the selection travel side of things. So going back to the importance of flexibility, the solution was designed around opportunity they knew was available but couldn't take advantage of with their existing tool. Shortly after implementation, each operation was seeing between 10 and 15,000 in inbound savings, labor savings per week, not working harder, just working smarter. And again, this was all done disruption-free. Now let's review a recent case study from a more tactical mass reslot initiative. that we worked on. This was done with a large nationwide grocery wholesaler. Again, highly competent team with a focus on slotting optimization and continuous improvement. A lot of our success stories come from companies who already know the value of true fulfillment optimization. When you know the value, all you need is the right tool in a lot of cases. These guys wanted to optimize for the best results within the existing layout that they had. They didn't want to change any equipment or adjust any existing profiles, but everything else was fair game. The strategy that was implemented here after uncovering some unique customer order patterns, again going back to the need for granular data, was commonality-based slotting. The goal was to reduce selection travel by grouping commonly ordered items together, or in this case, from a specific banner. The result was 38% of orders bypassed 33% of the layout with this new strategy. And as you can imagine, the selection productivity gained from resulted in significant savings for the operation. The savings amounted to about $550,000 for the first site. And as the strategy could be implemented throughout the network, it meant about $15 million in eventual savings for the network. Due to the dynamic nature of the business, order patterns, SKU proliferation, etc., the success of the strategy really hinged on daily maintenance. As I talked about before, is you have to, if you're setting up a strategy through mass reslot, if you don't have the ability to sort of maintain that, especially with a commonality-based slotting strategy, when you're bringing in new items and your items are changing, your order patterns are changing, it's extremely critical to have that maintenance there after the mass reslot in order to make sure that you're able to carry this out and to achieve this ROI, because it's pretty substantial. But if you can do it, if you're able to do it, if you're able to carry that strategy out on a mass reslot standpoint, and of course have something there to maintain it, the savings are fairly significant, as you can see. So let's review some key takeaways from the session today. Number one, follow the 5 fundamental principles. These should be non-negotiables when trying to establish true fulfillment optimization. In the pursuit of operational excellence and creating profitable growth, the decision between mass reslotting and daily optimization really shouldn't be a binary choice. Make sure that you are leveraging both, but ensure that if you're working with any mass reslot initiatives, that you're not doing it from a reactive standpoint. And that's really where daily slotting comes in. Is that should be a non-negotiable within your operation, and mass reslotting should really be when you're looking at getting even more out of your current layout, or you're starting to uncover capacity constraints or other constraints that you need to deal with. And finally, operational data, consistency, proper tools, and aligned leadership are all very important to any effective slotting optimization strategy. So, like I said, if you are evaluating your existing process, make sure you start there with the four factors that we talked about. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching. We hope you took a lot of value from the session and enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. As you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, likely we won't have a live Q&A, but if you have any specific questions or feedback, please do feel free to head back to the event page on LinkedIn and leave a comment or contact us directly, of course. Our email is right there, info@synccontext.com. We'd love to hear from you, even if it's just feedback. We also taken a lot of questions that we've been asked in the past and about slotting optimization, about SKU stream, and answered them on our blog. So you'll find them on our blog if you want to head over there at synccontext.com. You can look at the case studies that we have there, and you can also check out our blog, like I said, and you'll find those 2 blog posts fairly recently done, and I'll include the direct link below to both of those. And if you're not following us on LinkedIn or subscribed here on YouTube, please do so so you don't miss out on any of our content or event invites in the future. We do post stuff like this on YouTube every week, and on LinkedIn we're posting stuff similar to this as well. So if you did enjoy the content and you found it helpful, then please do consider following us on both channels and keeping up with what we're doing. So thanks again, and bye for now.